Greetings, space stories enthusiasts. Prepare yourselves for a new voyage into the realm of science fiction. If you find our videos enjoyable, remember to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and use the join button to unlock exclusive benefits. Let's begin an adventure that pushes the boundaries of your imagination. Lieutenant James Carter struggled to suppress a shiver as the alien Empress's unwavering gaze assessed him from across the assembly hall. This crowded space was located on Vesper, a war-scarred human colony. The seasoned officer maintained rigid attention, every muscle taut, adrenaline coursing through his veins as he observed the room teeming with human and Zenui dignitaries. James's fingers instinctively moved closer to his pulse rifle, prepared to respond to any indication of danger toward the human delegation. As a key operative of the Earth Defense Force, his foremost mission was to secure humanity's interests during these sensitive diplomatic negotiations aimed at ending the prolonged galactic war. The future of the human race was precarious. Failure could mean annihilation at the hands of the ruthless Zenui. Silence fell over the chamber as the doors opened, revealing Empress Leora gliding into the hall. Her shimmering robes swirled around her. Her sharp emerald eyes met James's from across the room, causing a sudden pounding in his chest. A profound primal attraction coursed through him, testing his legendary composure. The Empress appeared to hesitate for a fraction of a second under his intense gaze, her royal poise faltering before she regained composure and elegantly joined the other alien representatives. James's commander discreetly signaled him to monitor the Empress's actions, concerned about potential Zenui deception. James sensed a pull, like a magnetic field drawing them together, a greater attraction than any battle. The assembled beings, all striving for peace, were unaware of a shadowy cabal plotting to undermine the alliance. Their plan was to sabotage the negotiations, pushing the Vesper colony into chaos. On the cusp of imminent conflict, James and Leora would realize they had much more at stake than the future of their respective peoples. They were compelled to acknowledge the fierce desire threatening to consume them and the devastating consequences of their forbidden passion. In the days following the diplomatic summit, an uneasy quiet settled over the human command center on Vesper. Empress Leora remained to continue negotiations, and much to James's surprise, he was appointed to her personal security team. As he shadowed the Zenui monarch through the sterile hallways of the compound, James fought his inherent distrust of her kind against the irresistible attraction he felt toward Leora. Every fleeting touch sent sensations across his skin, reminding him of that first charged moment when their eyes met across the assembly hall. Late one evening, after a particularly challenging day of diplomatic tasks, James escorted Leora back to her chambers. The silence grew heavier as they moved along the long corridors. Just as they approached her door, a sudden explosion shook the structure, bringing the world crashing down. Alarms blared and soldiers moved through the halls, but James's focus was solely on the Empress. Instinctively, he shielded her from potential danger and led her to a narrow maintenance shaft, closing the door behind them. The narrow space within the tunnel was lit only by emergency lights. James became hyper-aware of Leora, the heat of her presence nearly unbearable. His heart thumped with a dangerous thrum of desire. "I think we're safe for now," James said, his voice rougher than intended. Leora turned to face him, her eyes shimmering in the dim light. "Thank you," she said. With gratitude, she placed her hand on his chest. This simple touch was his undoing. He cradled Leora's face in his hands and sealed her lips in a heated kiss. Her form softened as she melted into him. All rational thought vanished in the inferno. A descending whistle and a nearby blast suddenly extinguished the flames, pulling them apart. Staring at each other in shock, they realized their actions. Ashamed, James led Leora further into the tunnel, focusing on securing a safe passage with the defense forces. Though he tried, his mind kept replaying the all-consuming kiss. Eventually, they found themselves in the bombed-out market square, littered with debris and scorch marks that stood as evidence of the brutality. Leora suddenly stopped, seeming to listen intently. James, noticing her action, wanted to urge caution, but without warning she veered to the left. He ran after her, pulse rifle raised, prepared for another attack. When he reached the Empress, she was on her knees, lifting a metal beam. James wanted to get her moving, but noticed a child trapped within the debris, their terrified whimpers resonating in the rubble. Without hesitation, Leora moved the beam and rescued the small human child. James was stunned by this action. The Zenui he had been taught to hate were not supposed to be compassionate. He saw hope for a future where the two peoples could work together rather than remain in conflict. It was tenuous, like a single flame, but a start. In the following days, James entered the command center. Commander Reyes addressed him, visibly upset. "James, tell me what you saw." James replied, "Sir, with all due respect, I saw the Empress save the child, though it could have been calculated." Reyes responded, "It doesn't matter what you think you witnessed. You will conduct this investigation without prejudice. Is that understood?" "Yes, sir," James answered. James struggled. He meticulously questioned Leora for hours. Their glances lingered and their skin brushed. The Empress asked, "Why are you doing this? You know I wasn't responsible." As James prepared to respond, a young lieutenant entered. "Sir, we found something." Within Leora's quarters, detailed schematics of the colony's defenses were discovered. Hours later, Leora was confined to a high-security cell. However, James's doubts grew as he examined the incriminating evidence. That night, he visited her in detention. Leora said, "I fear I know who's responsible." She leaned in close and whispered, "We need to find proof before it's too late." "But how?" A dangerous glint appeared in her eyes. "We break into the Zenui compound." It was insane, but James nodded. "I'll get you out of here tonight," he stated. As they maneuvered through the shadows of the colony that evening, James knew he was crossing a line of no return. With Leora beside him, her hand clasped in his, he couldn't bring himself to have second thoughts. They made their way toward the Zenui compound, hearts beating in sync as they began their stealthy search for evidence. James couldn't shake the feeling that they were plunging headfirst into a storm that would either forge an unbreakable bond or shatter them forever. James's fingers danced across the console, decrypting the final layer of Zenui security protocols. His eyes widened as files flickered across the screen, revealing the rogue faction's hidden base location. "We've found them," he whispered, turning to Leora. She leaned in, her emerald eyes scanning the data. "The Crimson Nebula. It's perfect. The electromagnetic interference would mask their energy signatures." A muscle twitched in James's jaw. "I'm going after them." Leora grabbed his arm. "James, it's suicide. That nebula is a death trap for any ship, let alone a single fighter." "I don't have a choice," he said, his voice low and intense. "They'll come after you again, and I can't let that happen." Their eyes locked, unspoken volumes passing between them. Finally, Leora nodded. "Then go, but return to me." Hours later, James's stealth fighter pierced the swirling veils of the Crimson Nebula. Tendrils of cosmic dust slithered across his viewport as he plunged deeper into the roiling maelstrom. His sensors strained against the interference, scanning for any sign of the enemy base. Just as frustration threatened to consume him, a faint blip emerged on his readouts. Heart racing, James angled toward the signal. The nebula parted, revealing a monstrous dreadnought emerging from the cosmic mists. He circled the behemoth, seeking a weak point. There, a lone shuttle docked in the central hangar. Leora had to be there. James's hands tightened on the controls. Now or never. He unleashed a volley of decoy flares, blinding the enemy sensors. His fighter accelerated toward the dreadnought, laser cannons blazing. The first salvo sheared off a massive engine nacelle, sending it spinning into the nebula's depths. Alarms blared throughout the enemy ship as James initiated relentless attack runs, systematically crippling its weapon systems. With the ship's offensive capabilities neutralized, James transmitted, "Leora, can you hear me?" Static crackled. Then, "James, I knew you'd come for me." Relief washed over him at the sound of her voice. He angled toward the hangar, already formulating their escape route. Suddenly, his fighter lurched violently. A lucky shot from a damaged turret had taken out his starboard stabilizer. The hangar loomed ahead as his craft spiraled out of control. James roared in defiance, slamming the ejection lever. He rocketed free an instant before his fighter exploded into a fireball against the hangar deck. His chute deployed with a bone-jarring jolt. James hit the deck hard, rolling to his feet as armed patrols converged on his position. He dove behind the flaming wreckage of his fighter, bracing for the killing blow. Leora's commanding voice echoed across the hangar. She strode toward him, every inch the regal queen, despite her confinement. With a curt gesture, she dismissed the astonished guards. Their eyes met, a whirlwind of emotion passing between them. Without a word, Leora led James to her waiting shuttle. They lifted off as chaos engulfed the crippled dreadnought behind them. Once safely beyond the nebula's reach, all pretense of composure shattered. They crashed together, months of suppressed desire erupting in a flurry of desperate kisses and roaming hands. Alien flesh met human skin as they explored each other's bodies with ardent curiosity. In the aftermath, they lay intertwined, the weight of their actions settling over them. James traced the intricate patterns on Leora's skin, his voice a low rumble. "When this is over, we'll show there's another way." Leora nodded solemnly, though uncertainty flickered in her eyes. The path ahead was fraught with danger, the implications of their forbidden union still unknown. As they steered the shuttle toward the edge of Zenui space, neither could fully grasp the gravity of what they had set in motion. Their bond had ignited the spark of revolution, one that would soon set the galaxy ablaze with change. As they approached the edge of Zenui space, the initial euphoria of their escape began to wane, overshadowed by the burden of reality. James noticed Leora growing distant, her gaze fixed on the stars beyond the viewport. "What's troubling you?" he asked, reaching for her hand. "We must find a solution," he insisted, but doubt lingered in her eyes. Leora rose abruptly. "I have a plan. Vital intelligence about the conspiracy must be delivered. We'll organize peace talks as a guise." James nodded, eager to act, but as they neared the designated coordinates, uneasiness tingled along his spine. The Zenui delegation ships materialized, sleek and menacing. "Something's not right," he muttered, reaching for the controls. Too late. Tractor beams locked onto their shuttle, dragging them into the hangar bay of the lead vessel. Armed guards swarmed the shuttle. James turned to Leora, betrayal etched across his features. "You set me up," he struggled as the guards hauled him away. Leora's anguished expression burned into his memory. Days blurred in his cell as interrogators relentlessly pressed him about the conspiracy. James divulged fragments of truth, hints about the rogue faction's plans to escalate the war. Then came the public spectacle. They dragged him before cameras, determined to break him completely. The first lash of the energy whip elicited a scream from his throat. Through the haze of agony, he glimpsed Leora's horrified face in the crowd. Suddenly, the torture ceased. Alarms blared as Leora burst into the chamber, blaster in hand. "This ends now," she snarled, freeing James from his restraints. But their reunion was short-lived as they fled down twisting corridors. A stun blast struck Leora in the back. She crumpled. Guards swarmed around her. Agonized, James obeyed her final plea to escape, slipping away in the chaos. Within hours, a joint human-Zenui strike force assaulted the conspirators' stronghold. James led the charge, cutting a path straight to Leora's cell. When their eyes met, a wordless understanding passed between them. He helped her to her feet, drawing her close. "Despite everything, I couldn't leave you behind." Together they pushed onward, determined to end the conflict once and for all. As the dust settled on their daring rescue, James and Leora found themselves thrust into the spotlight, a situation neither had anticipated. The journey back to Vesper Colony was tense, filled with furtive glances and hushed conversations. When they landed, a cacophony of voices greeted them, some cheering, others hurling accusations. James instinctively moved closer to Leora, his hand brushing hers. The simple gesture sent ripples through the crowd. In the days that followed, they were paraded before committees and councils, recounting their harrowing ordeal and the conspiracy they'd uncovered. For every person who saw their bond as a beacon of hope, another viewed it as an abomination. Late one night, Leora paced their secure quarters, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing with agitation. "This can't continue, James. They'll tear us apart." He watched her, feeling the weight of their impossible situation. "What do you propose?" She turned to him, her emerald eyes blazing with determination. "There's a way, an ancient ritual long forgotten by most of my people. It would unite us permanently." James's brow furrowed. "What do you mean, unite us?" Leora explained the intricacies of the binding ritual, her words painting a picture of transcendence and unity that both thrilled and terrified him. Days passed as James grappled with the decision, the pressure mounting as extremists from both sides made increasingly bold moves against them. Finally, in the dim light of their room, he met Leora's gaze. "Let's do it." The escape from Vesper was fraught with danger. They slipped past security checkpoints, hearts pounding as alarms blared in the distance. Leora piloted their stolen shuttle with preternatural skill, weaving through asteroid fields until the massive silhouette of an ancient Zenui temple ship loomed before them. Inside, the air thrummed with latent energy. Leora led James through winding corridors to a chamber bathed in ethereal light. "Are you ready?" she asked softly. They began the ritual, following steps etched into the ship's walls. As the final incantation left their lips, the world exploded into sensory overload. Pain unlike anything James had ever experienced tore through him. He felt his body stretching, twisting, reshaping at the molecular level. Beside him, Leora writhed in similar agony. Their minds collided, memories and emotions intertwining, until he couldn't tell where he ended and she began. In that moment of purest connection, James understood the true depth of Leora's love for him and his for her. An eternity later, the maelstrom subsided. James blinked, his new eyes adjusting to the light. He looked down at his transformed body, marveling at the swirling bioluminescent patterns now adorning his muscular frame. Leora stood before him, her lithe form augmented with unmistakably human characteristics. Their eyes met, and a spark of shared consciousness passed between them. "It worked," she breathed, her voice resonating in their minds as one. They turned to face the viewport, gazing at stars that suddenly seemed full of new possibility. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, a living embodiment of what their two species could become. James and Leora's euphoria at their successful transformation was short-lived. Within days of their return to Vesper Colony, the first attempt on their lives unfolded. A plasma grenade detonated within their living space. Only their heightened reflexes averted incineration. Attacks became commonplace. Snipers targeted them during public engagements, and saboteurs infiltrated their security. Though they escaped unharmed, innocent bystanders did not. After a brutal incident where a dozen colonists perished, James pulled Leora close. "We cannot remain here. We're endangering everyone." Nodding somberly, she replied, "I know of a safe haven." They vanished into the night aboard a long-dormant Zenui dreadnought. As the systems came to life, Leora's eyes widened in astonishment. "James, look at this," she exclaimed, pointing to a holographic display revealing long-lost Zenui technology. Her fingers flicked over the controls, decrypting file after file. "Incredible," she breathed. "Our ancestors understood interspecies biology far more than we imagined." James leaned in, studying the detailed diagrams. "Is that what I think it is?" Leora, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing with anticipation, nodded. "A means for us to have children. True hybrids." The procedures were daunting, requiring genetic manipulation and significant physiological reconfiguration, unlike anything they had attempted. James steeled himself. "We must try. It's the only way to prove our peoples can be united." The trials were relentless. James watched, horrified, as Leora's body contorted during the final phase. Her screams echoed through the dreadnought's vast halls. She emerged trembling, bathed in sweat, her new form confirming her capacity to bear his child. Word of their success spread, intensifying tensions throughout the colony. Extremists on both sides viewed the impending birth as an unacceptable threat. When Leora entered her fertile period, alarms wailed across the dreadnought. Security feeds showed a swarm of assault craft converging on their position. They launched into space, joined by a small fleet of sympathetic vessels. As enemy ships pursued, plasma bolts tore across the viewport. Leora, in great pain, cried out. James took control, executing evasive maneuvers. He stayed focused as Leora struggled through the birthing process, her body radiating uncanny energy that pushed her limits. Amid alarms, weapon discharges, and Leora's desperate cries, their shields nearly failed. At last she gave a final cry of triumph. James turned, breath catching at the sight of two tiny forms nestled in Leora's embrace. The infant's skin shimmered, a fascinating blend of human and Zenui features. As they drew closer to the sanctuary world, a message came through. "We've heard the news. Your children are welcome." Valeria, the sanctuary world, welcomed James and Leora. The couple poured their energy into building a home for their hybrid twins. James marveled at the infants' rapid growth, their skin shimmering with ever-evolving light patterns, a hypnotic interplay of human and Zenui genetics. He often found Leora gazing at them, her expression blending amazement and protective love. "They're perfect," she whispered one night, holding both babies to her chest. James agreed, overcome with emotion. They were the future, but their peace was short-lived. The first attack came without warning. A series of explosions struck the colony's outskirts. James and Leora swiftly coordinated with local security to repel the insurgents. As days passed, the raids grew bolder. James grew restless, every muscle tense. "We can't keep living like this," he growled. A massive blast cut him off as their dwelling's door blew inward, revealing a mob of masked figures. James dashed toward the twins' room while Leora unleashed a flurry of defensive fire. The next moments passed in a whirlwind of smoke and plasma bolts. James emerged with the crying infants to find Leora slumped against a wall, blood pouring from her wounds. "Get them out," she rasped, her eyes locking onto the babies with aching effort. "Keep them safe." Heart-shattering, James knew she was right. With one last desperate look, he fled with the twins, leaving Leora behind to ensure their escape. The euphoria surrounding James and Leora's transformation didn't last. Soon after returning to Vesper Colony, a plasma grenade exploded in their room. Only their enhanced reflexes kept them alive. Attacks intensified, snipers singled them out, and their security was compromised. Though they escaped, innocent bystanders perished. After one cruel incident claimed a dozen lives, James held Leora close. "We can't stay here. We're risking everyone." She nodded grimly. "I have an idea." They escaped at night aboard an ancient Zenui dreadnought. As its systems activated, Leora gasped. "James, look!" A holographic screen displayed blueprints of Zenui technology. She decrypted files, murmuring, "Incredible. Our ancestors understood interspecies biology better than we imagined." James studied the diagrams. "Is that what I think it is?" Leora's bioluminescent pulse confirmed it. "A way to have children, actual hybrids." The procedures were complex, involving genetic manipulation and physiological reconfiguration beyond their experience. James hesitated but resolved. "We must try. It's the only way to prove our species can unite." The tests pushed their limits. James watched in fear as Leora's body transformed in the final stage, her cries filling the ship. She emerged trembling, her new form showing she could bear his child. Their success spread, stoking tension across the colony. Extremists saw the childbirth as a threat. When Leora went into labor, alarms rang out, and a swarm of attacking vessels appeared. They fled into space with Allied support. Plasma fire streaked past. Leora doubled over in pain. James piloted, saving the ship. Leora fought through contractions, her body shifting to enable birth. Amid alarms, fire, and agony, with shields near collapse, she cried in triumph. James saw his children in Leora's arms, their skin gleaming with a mix of human and Zenui traits. As they approached the sanctuary world, a message crackled. "Welcome. Your children are welcome." On Valeria's harsh plains, James and the twins, Orion and Astra, materialized. Orion staggered, adjusting to his body enhancement. Astra steadied him, her eyes sweeping the landscape. They built a sanctuary from the planet's bedrock. Weeks passed as they constructed a secret base. Astra's eyes glowed spectrally. "Death," she said. "A great deal of it." Orion responded, "Fleets mobilizing, armies mustering. They're coming for us, for what we symbolize." James clenched his fists, cursing his lack of foresight. "We'll have to move again, find somewhere more remote." Astra countered, "We can't keep running. The plan must begin." They spoke of ancient star charts and weapons of unimaginable power. James asked, "That weaponsmith citadel, does it exist?" Orion confirmed the Zenui maps. "If we control the citadel, we can ensure peace and force both sides to agree," Astra said. James's blood ran cold as their comms alerted them. "An alliance of Zenui and human extremists," it relayed grimly. Orion nodded. "We have little time." Seeing his children in battle armor, radiating energy, James made his decision. "Let's go," he said, the words simple and decisive. They boarded their stealth craft, plotting a course for the fabled citadel. As they plunged into the void, James observed his children. Their faces were set in concentration, but he glimpsed flashes of apprehension, premonitions of the trials ahead. The weaponsmith citadel loomed, a vast edifice of impossible geometries. Reality seemed to twist as they navigated its non-Euclidean corridors. They reached the core, a colossal chamber housing machinery beyond comprehension. The twins moved with purpose, interacting with control systems that responded to their unique biology. "We've initiated the forging process," Astra announced, her voice resonating oddly. "But it'll take time." A deafening explosion cut her off. The chamber shuddered as alarms screamed. "They're here," Orion growled, his skin shimmering with pent-up energy. James drew his weapon, its weight grounding him in the surreal chaos. "How much time?" "Less than we have," Astra replied grimly. The far wall dissolved in a torrent of plasma fire. Enemy soldiers flooded through, a nightmarish blend of human and Zenui, warped by hatred. James fired, his enhanced reflexes, downing targets with inhuman accuracy. The twins unleashed their powers, warping gravity and shredding matter at a subatomic level. Yet for every foe felled, two more appeared. James felt himself forced back, the relentless tide pushing them from the crucible they'd fought to ignite. "We can't hold them," he yelled above the battle's din. "No," Orion cried, sensing their intent. But it was too late. Astra and Orion's forms began to disintegrate, merging with the weapon's cosmic energies. Their screams of agony and triumph echoed through James's soul as reality teetered on oblivion's edge. A blinding light erupted from the forge's core. James shielded his eyes, his last thought a prayer that his children's sacrifice wouldn't be in vain. When the light faded, James found himself adrift in a void of ash and desolation. Fragments of worlds and starships drifted past his damaged escape pod. He stared numbly at the cosmic carnage, his mind grappling with the destruction scale. A warning chime snapped him back. Enemy boarding craft approached. With trembling hands, James opened a hidden compartment, retrieving a gleaming vial containing the distilled essence of his children's hybrid genome, a final hope for their envisioned future. As cutting torches sounded, James clutched the vial to his chest, steeling himself for the coming confrontation. He would endure whatever horrors awaited at his captor's hands. As long as he drew breath, the promise of a united galaxy would live on.